Hello, I'm Jo Dixon from the University of Southampton, and this is a quick video to review what's been happening on our Understanding Language Learning and Teaching Futurelearn course in week 1. I've been reading your comments and contributing to the discussions throughout the week, and I'll continue to do so throughout the course. My job is not to provide all the answers. I don't think there are always right and wrong answers when we're discussing the topic of language and language learning and language teaching. What I do want to do is to encourage you to think more deeply about some of the topics and to use the comments to develop discussions that perhaps prompt you to change your ideas or develop your thinking on some aspects of the topics we present in our materials. So in this video, I'm just going to mention a few of the comments and discussions that have caught my eye this week. I'm afraid I can't mention them all, so apologies if I've overlooked yours. There are well over 100 comments on some of the steps already, and it's great that so many of you are participating, but it does mean that I won't see all of them. By the way, to give your contributions more visibility, instead of always adding a separate comment and just answering the question that we've presented on the page, consider making your contribution a reply to somebody else's comment, because then the people you're replying to may receive a notification that you've replied to them, and that might prompt them to look at your comment and reply to you. I think as we move through the course, especially if you're joining late, if you comment on week 1 now, for example, a lot of people will be moving on to week 2, and they may not see what you've written in week 1. So I really urge you to reply to each other, and so that we're really discussing and not just presenting our own opinions separately. And perhaps you're then prompted to think about things a little more deeply and learn from each other's ideas. So what have we been talking about? We've focused very much on language itself, language use and language learning this week. Next week we move on to think about language teaching a bit more. And on step 1.4, a lot of you have had a go at defining language. What is language? I was interested to see the variety of words used to define language. Language has been called a set of sounds and symbols, a product of our interactions and needs, a live process as well. Flavia, Nicole and Joelle have discussed the idea of language as performing, and Joelle, I think it was, has added some links to explanations of speech act theory. So adding links to the discussion is a great idea as well, giving people more reading to do, more ideas to learn about. So if you perhaps commented on what is language near the beginning of the week and you haven't given it much more thought since, perhaps pop back to see how some of those discussions are developing, see what you think of the way that other people have described language and whether it contrasts with your own idea or whether you're prompted to change your ideas. On step 1.9, we introduced something called the bottleneck hypothesis. Now, this is a relatively recent hypothesis. It's one that a lot of people can relate to, it seems, but feel free to be critical of it or question it. There are a lot of different theoretical positions, theoretical ideas about language and language learning. And these theories, they develop over time, they get adapted, they get extended as new research evidence comes to light. So, it may not be fully formed, it may not be the best way of thinking about how we get stuck when we're learning a language. Christine has raised some questions, and in the thread started by Christine, Joshua has actually proposed visualising the process in a completely different way. So have a look and see what you think of Joshua's suggestion, or perhaps you have your own suggestion for another analogy, another alternative to the bottleneck. What is hard and what is easy, and what factors impact on language learning is always interesting, and we always have a range of views on this because we've had different experiences ourselves. On step 1.10, that's where you're discussing what's hard. I think there are a huge range of contributions there, and but I guess they fall into two categories. I think there are things that are difficult for everyone about a particular language. So in English, people have mentioned things like phrasal verbs and collocations because they don't seem to follow any rules or patterns. They seem to be difficult for most people. But then there are also things that are harder for some people, depending on how they compare to their own language. So, if a certain concept doesn't exist in your language or the languages you're familiar with, then it may be harder to get to grips with in a new language. People have mentioned things like grammatical gender, which doesn't exist in English, so it can be hard for English speakers to learn in other languages. In terms of developing skills, reading, writing, speaking, listening, Christine wonders how much harder it is to learn a language that has a different writing system. Now, I'm sure there are a great many people on the course who have experience of that. So is that an issue, or is that a minor thing when it comes to learning to write in a different language? No one's commented on that. Nobody's replied to Christine about that point. So have a look if you've missed that and you have something to say. We considered the implications of understanding what is difficult, the implications for teaching. So check out the discussion started by Roy on step 1.12. That's about whether teachers should spend more time addressing the aspects of a language that are difficult or not, or how we make those decisions. So if you've got anything to say about that, have a look at that one. And yeah, in terms of the factors that impact on language learning, Nicole has suggested that all factors are equally important. Sandy has disagreed, suggesting that age and gender do not play a role. What do you think? Let them know by replying to their thread on step 1.14. If you want to. But of course, we're moving on to week 2 anyway. So if you've got as much as you feel you want to out of week 1, let's start discussing the topics that come up in the week 2 materials. It's much more about teaching, classroom teaching in week 2 than learning. And I know that not everybody here is a teacher, but please don't think that means that you can't contribute to those discussions. As language users and language learners, your opinions, your experiences are very valid and very much welcomed. What else is there to say? Just looking at my notes, you can tell I'm not an actor and I haven't rehearsed this well. Sorry. Yeah, I think that's about it, and my video is probably already too long. So just to reiterate, try to use that reply function rather than always just adding your own comment. It will make your comments more visible. You can also bookmark comments that you want to return to later, that you want to be able to find easily. And you can follow people as well. So if you notice that somebody frequently says things that you find interesting. So perhaps, ways of connecting with each other, ways of returning to the same thread to add to a developing discussion rather than keeping all the comments separate might help us to get more out of this. Anyway, so I very much look forward to another week of discussing this with you. As I said, I'll be with you in the comments now and then, not all the time, but popping in most days. And I will see you at the end of the course, at the end of week 4, for another video roundup like this.